Hello everyone, and welcome to this latest video. With this weekend being the running of the Bathurst 1000 race at Mt Panorama, I thought I'd do a video of some of the winning Fords from the different eras at Bathurst that have won from 1963's inaugural event at Bathurst right up to the last Bathurst winner from way back in 2019. Yeah, 6 years since the last win for a Ford up there. Now, first up, we have this Ford Cortina 440 Mark I model. It is. This vehicle won Bathurst in 1963 with Harry Firth and Bob Jane at the wheel. Of course, Harry Firth would go on to be synonymous with the Holden dealer team from 1969 onwards, but prior to that he was involved with Ford and Bob Jane, of course, later on would be a great tyre retailer behind the Bob Jane Team Arts franchises. But back in the day, Bob Jane was a great race driver. Now, as it goes for a spin, give some more information. This particular model, this was made by Apex Model Replicas. They're a company run by Richard Poole, and he originally worked for Biante before branching out to start his own company. And this particular vehicle is resin rather than the traditional diecast. And a lot of collectors didn't really like this model when it came out because of that fact, because they seen it as a plastic model. But being that it was a one-off vehicle and they weren't making any other vehicles, I guess it was the easiest way to manufacture this particular model. The details of the car are really good. I guess the only downside of it as such, on the base of the vehicle, it's got what some people described as toy car axles. And another thing people found disappointing was the front end treatment with the headlight and front indicator coverings, which were to replicate the tape that was used to cover those features at the front of the car. So in the event of an accident, I guess, the glass didn't shatter. So perhaps the replication of that's not that good. And the detail underneath's okay. I'll turn it around this way. Not a huge amount of detail underneath. And I mean, if you look, you can see the axles, but you won't see a great deal of the interior, but it's got a nice red interior to replicate the red vinyl that was used in the vehicle. But as a model that sits in the cabinet, it's a quite nice model, and as the years have gone on, this has become quite a collectible model. So for all the negative attention it received, it's sort of came good. Yeah, and it was the beginning of Ford's first of 3 wins at Bathurst. 1964 was a 2-door Cortina GT, and 1965 was the GT 500, which was another Mark I Cortina 2-door as well. That was developed in Australia so they could race at Bathurst. So it's one of the first homologation specials, whereas the GT had been, well, as imported from England or built here to the British specs. One of the big features of the 65 car was a bigger fuel tank, which obviously meant less pit stops. Yeah, so that's the beginning. Now, with the previous model, that was from the era of production-based racing, which went from 1960 in the preceding event that was held at Phillip Island. It was held there 60, 61, 62, and 63. That era that the Cortina was part of was the production car era, which truly began earlier in 1960 at Phillip Island. From 1973 onwards, we moved to the Group C era, and in that year, Alan Moffat and Ian Pete Gagan, they won the 1973 event in a XA GT Falcon hardtop. This is a model by Biante. Now, this is quite a solid model. It sits quite high because, you know, it's not quite as low as what the John Goss car was that won in 1974. And they sit together in the cabinet. But this is a fully opening model. Posable steering, and you can see it's still got a production car seat in it. Now, the boot, of course, won't stay up, but that's inside the boot. Under the bonnet's a bit better. You got your detailed 351 Cleveland Ford V8. You know, it's even still got the battery at the front of the engine bay. Now, this was Alan Moffat's third Bathurst win, and Pete Gagan's first Bathurst win. I think only Bathurst win from memory. Quite a talented driver he was too. This was the last year that Ford ran a factory team as well. So from 1974 onwards, Alan was a factory-assisted Ford driver, but unlike Peter Brock's team, which was a full factory effort. But anyway, this particular car, it looks really nice in the white with light blue. But sadly, a little while after that Bathurst win in 1974, Alan was competing in a race at Phillip Island, and his XA GT was ridden off in a pretty big accident there. So this car no longer survives. Now, moving on from 1973 and the Group C era that ran from that year through till the end of 1984, we move on to the Group A era, which began in 1985. This was Ford's first winner. So, anyway, moving on to 1988, Tony Longhurst, partnered by a young driver by the name of Thomas Mazera, who'd come from Czechoslovakia. They won the 1988 Great Race, as it was also called. Of course, the move to Group A, they had fully stripped out interiors. you know, just the driver's seat, safety equipment, dashboard, door trims. These also had wind-up windows rather than the electric windows that the road cars actually ran in the boot or lift up area. You've got a nice big fuel tank. Lots of great detail. And under the bonnet, you've got a Ford 2-litre motor, which was modified by Cosworth, with a great big turbo, and I think around this time they were putting out 500 to 600 horsepower. Now, as it runs around, you can have a look at more of the car and its shape. You'll notice that it doesn't have a main sponsor, but it did. It was sponsored by Benson and Hedges, which is, of course, a cigarette or a tobacco company. And in Australia and a lot of other places around the world, it's illegal to advertise tobacco products. So that's why you'll notice an "and" located in various spots around the car, because on the real card they're, of course, either B&H or Benson and Hedges advertising. Being an adult model, it is, of course, frustrating. You can purchase these stickers, of course, and those prices vary from the size of the stickers. So you can pay $10 for some of the stickers, and they can be $30 to $40 for the stickers or decals. Yeah. This model was by, once again, Biante or AutoArt. I think it shared the same mould as the Sierras that were made for the Mini Champs brand. So I have a few of the Sierras that were Mini Champs ones of overseas Sierras, like a couple of vegan burger ones, for example, and they are very similar in details. Some of the later ones are different, and that's just different manufacturers for those. As a side note, the Diecast shop that I go to, Diecast for You, its owner Neville, he owned one of this vehicle's sister cars. And for a time, before I went to the shop, but he'd keep the car located at the shop, which would have been a great thing to check out when you went to the shop. I've seen it a couple of times at the Muscle Car Masters, and it was a really nice looking X-race car. The real car that this one replicates the 88 Bathurst winner of Tony Longhurst. That's in the museum at Bathurst. And another interesting thing, this also features sponsorship from Dreamworld theme park in Queensland, or amusement park, that was owned by Tony Longhurst's father. The era of Group A racing ran from 1985 through till the end of 1992. Also in the 1992 Bathurst race, we started seeing what would take over and evolve into V8 supercars and supercars as we know it today. This particular model is a Dick Johnson and John Bowe Bathurst winner from 1994. This model is by AutoArt, Biante. It's quite a nicely detailed vehicle. It's got all the usual features of poseable wheels and steering. Not so much in evidence here. Now, under the bonnet, you don't get to see too much because of the great big engine cover. And the interior's pretty much the same as the Group A car. Unfortunately, the boot lid's a bit tricky to open, and I managed to bump off the middle of the wing, which we'll glue back on. But anyway, that's the risk you take when you handle these models. You've really got to be gentle with them. But as this a Dick Johnson car, it's not a car that I'm in a hurry to sell. So now we'll send it on a lap. Hopefully I've got my distance right, which I have. It clears the other Falcon next to it, which is quite good. Quite annoying that I bumped the wing off, but it will slot back in there. It'll just take a bit of persuasion to fit it back in and some glue. So, wow. On the front, you'll notice this car, its grille was sealed off. That was to, I guess, restrict air. In a way, it doesn't make sense because it's restricting airflow into the radiator as well. But the car ran strong all day, so it never affected it temperature-wise as far as I know. but that's the 1994 winner of Dick Johnson and John Bowe. Now, we move on to the era of V8 supercars, really, that began in 1998. They changed the name to V8 supercars. This particular one is a 2013 Bathurst winner. It's a car that Mark Winterbottom and Stephen Richards won the race with. It's a Ford FG Falcon. It's what's known as a car of the future, which the cars became more based around the chassis. This particular vehicle's not that greatly detailed underneath. So people claim, you know, the V8s, or supercars as we call them today, they're not really production car based. Well, that really started around 2012, 2013 with what was called the car of the future. There's still a lot of factory panels used on these cars. Bonnet, doors, boot lids, quarter panels, roof, etc. But it's built around a chassis, whereas the EB series of Falcon, that was built from a Ford Falcon shell, not a cobbled together race car. But everything was done for a reason. I mean, you know, there are a lot of new safety aspects about the car of the future, which was the reason they changed to that. Like the fuel tank, I believe, was moved inboard. I think that was from this model onwards, which meant in the event of an accident, less chance of the fuel tank rupturing. Or maybe that happened a bit later on, but it is part of the supercars architecture today. They're a very safe vehicle. Well, they're as safe as can be. I guess no race car's ever going to be fully safe, because the nature of speed, racetracks, concrete walls, all sorts of things happen in races. Now, this particular model, this was made by Classic Collectables. And I don't know whether this was the first sealed body model that they made, but it's one of the very first that I have from Classic Collectables, because Classic Collectables had always been fully opening. Doors, bonnets, boots. But this one was a sealed body. It was a die-cast sealed body, so it's not resin. And it's quite a nice looking model. Yeah, Mark Winterbottom perhaps could have went back to back in 2014, but unfortunately Red Bull driver Craig Lowndes ran into him as they got towards the end of the race. The sun got in his eyes apparently, so it never got to be back to back. But fortunately karma happened, and Mark's teammate Chaz Mostert managed to get the win, coming down Conrod Straight. So that was quite a great victory too. Now moving on to the previous, these were a Generation 2 supercar, which is the latest Ford winner that I have. The boot opens, thankfully. Yeah. Under what is really a hideous looking wing. It's just too big for the car. But that's the way it was on the race car. The roof line of the car, it was more to fit the roll cage of the common supercar chassis. So it's definitely not as aerodynamic as the road-going Mustang was. Thankfully, that's corrected by the latest model. Looking inside, you don't get to see a great deal because there's a driver's net. There's this protector bar area, and the driver's seat was moved inset after a big accident by Chaz Mostert in 2015. On the plate, it's got all the race wins by this driver who was Scott McLaughlin. He was teamed up by a French driver by the name of Alex Premat from France. They'd been teammates at Gary Rogers Motorsport. And you've got under the bonnet. We'll let it go for a lap. Yeah, this Mustang was the first year of the Mustangs, which we still have today. Although in Generation 3, as we are now, the cars thankfully have the standard line of roof of a road-going Mustang. The wing on the boot is, or hatch, is a lot better. The front aero dam spoiler looks better than on the previous model or series of supercar. This one came out of the Dick Johnson Racing workshop. Carries Dick's famous number 17, which as a 3-time Supercars winner, Scott never changed to the number one that a driver can do. And some were upset about that, but he did it to honour Dick Johnson. When Dick won his 5 championships, he always kept his 17 rather than swapping it to the number one of the champion. This was a great victory. It was marred a little bit by an incident in the race after safety car. I won't go into it too much, but basically his teammate Fabian Coulthard in the number 12 car, he got to lead from the pace car or safety car, and I don't know, but anyway, to this day, a lot of Supercars fans, usually of the Holden into Chevrolet supporter base, they still go on about this incident. Ford got 1 win from 2008 till today. But considering it all, I mean, you know, it was 1 race win, and 6 to 7 years later, these types that you see in the Supercars comment sections on Facebook, they won't let it go, but that it is what it is. It was a win. It's in the books, regardless of how they view the incident, and you can't change that history. It's there. Yeah, sadly, after this particular race, the real version of this car was involved in an accident up on the Gold Coast, and it was ridden off. So that car still exists, but it's basically a museum piece. I think the car's chassis is too far damaged to ever race again, but it still looks, it looks right on the outside. But the good thing is that Bathurst win, it contributed to Scott's championship win, which something that happens with Supercars these days, whereas in the old days, it wasn't part of the championship. It was what it should be, a standalone event. Now, of course, that Scott McLaughlin and Alex Premat car, that is made by Authentic Collectables. They're a company that from next year will be making every V8 Supercars model, every team in the championship, that is. So in, I guess, 4 or 5 years, they've really cornered the market. From Biante and Classic Collectables, Apex Collectables, of course, got bought out by Biante probably 5 or so years ago as well. So I thought I should put that in there. And Authentic Collectables models are really nice, detailed models, like a lot of them are. I mean, the Apex one, the interior of that car's really nice. Likewise, the Biante AutoArt cars, the classic Collectables car of Winterbottom and Richards, it's nice for what it is, but not as nice as what it could have been if it remained a fully opening die-cast model. So that's a run-through of Fords that won in the different eras of racing at Bathurst. From the 500-mile event, which lasted up till 1972, through the thousands from 1973 up till 2025. Hope you enjoyed the video. I make apologies for any mistakes that I may have made in my history of the event. All cares taken, of course, but maybe things slip in. My amateurness. As always, thanks for viewing. Take care. Goodbye.